Looks like it's going.
It looks like we are up and we are live. Good afternoon, everybody. We hope everyone's staying nice and toasty warm. At I'm assuming a lot of people are still at home. Obviously, we are at work today, but I think I don't know, in the hill country, I feel like a lot of people today are back at work. I
Yeah,
know I know up in the DFW area, a lot of people are still iced in. So, but I think overall Texas fared pretty well with this storm, which
pretty good.
I am grateful for. What was her name? Winter Storm Fern. Is that what her name was?
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I think that's what they named it. Fern. Whatever
Oh,
it
very
was,
cute.
the storm was kind to us this time around. So hopefully that's the only storm that we have this year and start off 2026 at not a terrible note, I would say.
Not too bad.
But we are going to be talking about choosing livestock for your property today. And we have Mr. Jason Mangold with us. Um, and he is oh gosh, I'm going to say the wrong county. You're based out of New Braunfels, right?
Yes, Comal County.
Comal. I always get like Comal and Hayes, and not being a Texas gal, like I'm still learning. I'm still trying. Still trying. There's a
I just
lot of
met you
counties.
both of them, so you're good.
But yeah, so Jason is going to speak with us about just like going through and like how do you choose like between running sheep versus goats versus cattle, and just choosing what's right for your property. Because as we've talked about, every single property is completely different. Just because it works for your neighbor doesn't necessarily work for you. Because everyone's got different goals, different amounts of time. I would say they could probably I hate to say donate a lot to certain, there's probably some livestock that are a little how do I word it? A little less time and labor intensive than others.
Yes.
Um, so I mean, I guess with that, oh gosh, I don't even know where to start with this. I mean, I feel like my brain is just like reeling as to what to even ask first.
No worries. I did write myself a couple of questions just in case. So, so I guess first things first, what what are some reasons you would consider different animals? I guess like calls that I get in the office, some people just say I want cattle, or maybe I want longhorn, and then we go do a site visit but their property's too small, things like that. So what are some considerations, just to kind of get started?
So basically, when I get calls or I'm going out to meet with somebody to look at their property and kind of ask that same question, the first thing I always ask them is, what are their realistic goals? What do they
Mm.
want from it? Is it for money? Is it for exemptions? Is it self-sufficiency? Because we're in that age where a lot of people want to be self-sufficient, so they're getting those milk cows or milk goats. They're getting a few pigs or some goats or some lambs, but they're wanting to be self-sufficient. Or is it just for a hobby, pleasure? Maybe that's why we want the longhorns, because the longhorns are pretty. We get to sit on our back porch, drink the coffee, look at our longhorns. So that's kind of the realistic goals of when I'm meeting with someone, that's what I want to know. What do they want out of it? And then from that point, you can kind of go forward. If you have enough property and you have enough grass, maybe cattle are realistic. If you're in the Texas hill country like most of us and you have rock and cedar and big hills, well, it might be goats or lambs. Just depends on kind of what they have, what they want to do with their property, what they're looking for. And so going forward, that's kind of what I try to get out of them first, just to see what they're thinking. How much time do they have? Because obviously, time is money. And if you're at work all the time and you don't have a lot of time, say on the weekends or in the evenings, maybe you need something that doesn't require a whole lot of time out of your hand, things along those lines. And so that's kind of the pinpoint of questions that I would ask going forward is those situations.
So in the hill country, so what are some of like the main livestock that y'all come across that are fairly suited to the hill country? Obviously, you'd mentioned, cattle, you can do it, just depends on the property, maybe not the best. You mentioned sheep, goats. Are there some other ones that people may not necessarily think of that'd be a good fit?
As far as it comes to livestock, those are the three big ones. After that, it gets a little harder because I know a lot of people like chickens, but it takes a lot of chickens if you're trying to get an ag exemption. If you're just raising them for eggs for yourself, things like that, easy to do with people. I actually did a program the other day and had about 40 to 50 people show up for a backyard chicken program.
Nice.
That actually impressed me. But chickens are a big thing. But also a lot of people like horses. Horses depends on the county, also depends on the property again. Horses eat quite a bit. And they're a little more destructive than cattle are when it comes to grass and your pastures, things like that. But realistically, if I'm looking at someone who's wanting to raise animal for ag exemption, money wise, taking them commercially, it's going to be sheep, goats, or cattle.
When you said about horses, I automatically thought of, and horses have generally, they are trying to find a way to hurt themselves. Bless them, they are very, very sweet. I rode horses growing up, but yeah, they always are trying to find a way to hurt themselves and make you take them to the vet.
Yeah,
So,
they say the same thing about sheep. Sheep are just looking for a way to die, is what people always say about them. But they can definitely be raised, and they're very hardy depending on which one you get.
yeah. So I guess I don't know, should we start sort of some like so obviously size is one thing that is good for something like livestock. You obviously, or livestock, cattle, you need a lot of property, you need a lot of grass. Are
Correct.
there any other considerations that people should think about when it comes to putting cattle on their property versus some of the smaller livestock?
So basically, yeah, you're right. In Comal County, that's kind of interesting because I'd say majority of the county is on the rocky side of 35, and I do have a little sliver that's on the Blackland Prairie where you can grow as much grass as you probably want over there. But yeah, you got to have the grass because if you don't have the grass, you're gonna basically spend more money on supplemental feed than what you would want to. And typically, that's what I find is a lot of homeowners bringing in some cattle. They get going good. We're in a serious drought. We've been in a serious drought. All of a sudden, they have no grass. Now they're buying feed weekly, and the cows are just eating them out of feed and bills. And so that's a huge thing that I run into with new landowners is they get surprised. They think they have enough grass, but you got to take into consideration what the recommendations are, what we recommend, and really think about that hard because many times, and recently I just did a site visit where a gentleman had 200 acres, wanted to run 200 cattle, and I told him absolutely not.
Yeah.
That just wasn't going to work as much as he would want it to, and as much as I wish it could happen, just not in this area. There's
Yeah,
no
maybe up in like the Dallas Fort Worth area, but that might even be a little heavy for up there because they have a lot of grass up there and they get a lot of rainfall.
correct. And after that, you need to look at your fences. How well are the fences on the property? Do you have fences on your property? If you don't, what's it going to cost you to put the fences? And then one thing with cattle is we really like to rotate our pastures. So is there a way to take that pasture and divide it, whether it's 2 pastures, 4 pastures, whatever it may be, depending on the size? Is there a way that you can do that to where you can rotate those cows and figure out a plan on the rotation? Because if you just let them out, it's going to go real fast and then you're going to be hurting. So water, fencing, grass, it's all got to be there in some way, some form, and getting out there and really checking out how much forage you have is going to be the biggest thing when it comes to cattle.
And so with cattle, what are some of the, so obviously like you raising like beef cows, that's sort of like you think of cattle like generally around here, that's like a big one that you think of, beef cattle. You had mentioned milk cows. What are some other cattle operations that you could run that people may not necessarily think about?
So you could always do a feeder cattle operation where you're bringing in cattle, you're feeding them for 30, 60 days. It could be less. It just depends on what you're looking at, but and what the turnaround is. But basically, you would buy young cattle, bring them in, put them on the pasture. You can keep them out there for 30 days, grass fed, or if you're more of a feedlot structure, you're feeding them out in grain. But those are two options that you can do. They're fast turnarounds. You get them in, get them out quick. And it's a little different than having a cow calf operation where you're raising the cattle, breeding them, having the calf, selling the calf off. They're there year round. And so that's just another option. But those do require, again, property that is maybe not necessarily the hill country. That could be on the other side of my 35 county. That's mostly houses these days, but that is an option.
And so the benefit to potentially running something like a feeder operation is you can bring them in, feed them for that 30-day window, and then let your property rest. That would be quote unquote your rotation, is you
Correct.
straight up remove them off your property till your vegetation
Correct.
rejuvenates, I guess.
Yeah.
Good
And
way to
then
put it.
another option is always getting a lease with somebody where maybe you lease it out for a certain amount of time during the year. Have restrictions in there. If it gets too low, then they need to find a different spot to move them. But leases, I've seen all kinds of lease agreements, and that's always an option too. Maybe you don't run your own animals, but if you are looking to have animals on the property, that's an easy way to do it as well.
Yeah, a little less headache. Like probably at the most, you got to make sure your waters are working, your fences are up. But if you see a sick cow, you call up the leasing. You're like, hey, you have a sick cow. Can you
Yeah.
please come take care of it? And you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, kind of like this weekend. You could have called them up and said, "Hey, I know it's icy, but you have a situation you need to come out here and take care of, and you're not the one out there in a 9-degree chill trying to solve the problem."
You can look out your back window while you're drinking your cup of coffee and your nice fuzzy bunny slippers while you're watching them try to, round up their cattle or feed them or whatever.
Correct.
So you had mentioned, and I'm kind of curious, like how common is it with milk cows? Like I don't ever think I've ever heard anybody like
So
have milk cows.
not very common on this part. I've only heard a couple of people that have called me that they have one milk cow,
One milk
and
cow.
it's just so that they can make their own milk.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that self-sufficiency thing. They're trying to be more self-sufficient, raise their kids in that kind of environment where they're getting the milk, they're feeding out the animals, they're butchering the animals. But as far as if you're going to have a farm, yeah, I don't see that down here. That's more, you got to go north just a little bit.
Yeah, and I guess they get like the big dairy operations where, I guess milk cows, they need a lot more water than
They do, and
your regular beef cow.
honestly, I hear more people call me about having milk goats than milk cows.
And in the hill country, that kind of makes sense, which I guess that means we'll sort of dive into, goats now.
Yeah.
Great, Jason, that was a great transition.
You're welcome.
You didn't even try. I love it. So I guess, yeah, so we'll kind of go through the same method. What are some things when you have goats? And I mean, I guess goats, sheep are pretty similar in their wants or needs in regards to what you should have on your property for them.
Right. And the biggest difference is obviously goats, they prefer forbs, weeds, as we call them, same as the deer. Whereas sheep, they do eat the grass first before they tend to go to those, but they'll both eat whatever's out there. Back home on the ranch, we raised about 300 head of Spanish goats on the property. They do take care of weeds pretty well, and then we learned that when it's real dry and there isn't really much out there, they will actually eat the cedar trees up to about where their head stops. But same thing there. You gotta have the fencing. With goats though, depending on what breed you get, Spanish goats, they're known for wanting to stick their head through those holes, get that grass on the other side, because you know the saying, grass is always greener on the other side of the fence.
Yep.
And then when they try to come out, they can't. So as a kid, I can remember every day having to go and pull goats out of a dang fence line, get their heads uncaught. So that is one thing about goats, depending on which one you buy. If you do buy horned goats like Spanish goats, then you might have an extra chore of getting those out of the garden and getting them out of the fence line. But yeah, you need food, you need water, shelter. Biggest thing on shelter for them is something that blocks the north wind. When those Arctic fronts come in, like they just did this last weekend, and it's really cold, they need something that's going to block the rain and block that north wind from coming in. And then water as well. And the cool thing about sheep and goats is you can have multiple litters in a year versus a cow, you're only going to get one calf or two calves if you're lucky. At one time a year, where sheep and goats will typically have two litters of goats twice a year. And my grandma's goats back home, they're her babies. We take care of them for her. But every year it seems like my dad tricks me in getting me figuring out when I'm coming down to the ranch, and that's the day we're going to go for goats and mark them and band them and do all the shots that we need to do with them. Never fails,
Just
but we
stop
do.
telling him when you're coming. Just be like, I'll come when I come. Just stop
Yeah.
asking.
Surprise visit.
He always asks, he's like, hey, when's your next trip down to the ranch? And I'll be like, well, I'm thinking about coming this weekend to put out some corn in the feeders. And say, oh, okay, well, you bringing a little one? I always say, yeah. And then about the time I get to Bandera, he calls me and he always says, hey, you still coming? Yeah, I'll be there in about 15 minutes. And I either say, good, we're going for goats, or good, we're about to haul hay in. And it's one of those two. Never fails. But
Oh, oh, go ahead. Did you have something else you wanted to
Oh,
say?
but yeah, with those goats or sheep, those are the main things you truly, truly need. And then having some kind of supplemental feed, especially during the winter time when it does get cold, something that they can eat on. We do cubes typically in hay for our goats. We do hay, sometimes molasses tubs, cubes like that for the cattle, but you will need some kind of supplemental feed at some point.
And for supplemental feed, and I know, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't live in the livestock world. I'm doing my best to learn. Are there certain feeds that I'm not gonna say can harm them, but necessarily could potentially cause some like issues in regards to like I think is it if you feed grain to like sheep and goats, you can get issues with like urinary tract type issues, or am I completely off base with that?
No, you can. It just depends on the feed. And so like sheep are very more prone to it. They can get a little more, they tend to have a little more struggles depending on the types of feed. They're a little more sensitive. But typically, if you go to your feed store and make sure you have a good relationship with your feed store, because they're going to know what's best depending on where you're located. But they can definitely set you in the right path because the higher you're going to look at percentage of protein, things like that in your feed. But yeah, you never just randomly feed your sheep just a random feed because you never know what's in that feed. If it's got too much iron or something along those lines, then you could end up actually hurting or killing your animals versus not. Same thing kind of with our pets. If you change up their diet, they get sick. Same thing with our livestock. If you change up their feed too much or throw something at them that trying to feed cow feed to a sheep and goat, it's just not going to work. You could definitely do some damage.
And I think it's like remembering back to my like nutrition days, my animal nutrition class. I think it's like 14 days is how long it takes for their like gut biome to like recalibrate itself to like a new. Y'all in the comments, if I am wrong, please call me out. But I feel like 14 days is what it was. Like it's about like 14-ish days where their gut biome will like turn over. So if they're in a new area, they'll become adjusted to, I don't know. I don't know if I'm wrong on that one.
That sounds right.
It's what my yeah, what I remember. But okay, so and one thing you had mentioned was fencing. So fencing for livestock different than fencing for sheep and goats, type of fencing.
So cattle, you can typically get away with strands of hot wire. For instance, my family, we live on Medina Lake. When the lake goes down, we get an extra 400 acres. Best way to build a fence is we do two strands of hot wire that run across the bottom. Because we still own the property. We've owned it since before there was a lake. And so when it goes down, we can do that. But if we try to turn our sheep and goats out there on two strands of barbed wire, or not barbed wire, but electric fence, even barbed wire, it ain't gonna work. They're gonna get out. The cows, they tend to stay where they're supposed to. But yeah, sheep and goat, you definitely got to have some kind of livestock fencing around where you want to keep them in.
Okay, so a little bit more
Yeah.
secure because they obviously a lot smaller bodied individuals and
And I will say
yeah.
one thing to remember is if you buy property and you say you have animal, say you get lambs, goats, cattle, you also got to remember to fence out where you don't want them. So if you don't want them in your backyard eating your flowers, be sure to fence them out. I know the first year that the subdivision moved in next to us, lake finally went down, and they got mad and they cut our fence line. And they did it multiple times. So finally, we just left it open, let all the cows and the sheep, all the goats go up in there. They ate everybody's plants out of everybody's yard, and they were so mad. But you definitely got to fence out too what you don't want them to get to.
That is a very valid point. And I'm assuming you probably have had very little issues with them cutting your fence
Yeah,
since then.
after
Yeah.
that, when they caused thousands of dollars of damage in landscape, yeah, no, they never cut the fence again.
Oh,
Hard
God.
lesson to learn.
Mhm. Yeah, without a doubt. So what are some of the different operations that you could run with like sheep or goats?
So typically, if you're gonna run sheep or goats, it's gonna be either around here. It's gonna be the commercial, meaning you're raising them, selling them to the market. Obviously, sheep and goat market, it's real good right now. You can get pretty good money for some 60, 70 pound goats. Same thing with lambs. Or you're doing some kind of show quality, so you're raising them to sell to the show world. We have a lot of producers. I got two or three here in the county that raise some lambs, and they do raise goats for show. I even have one that raises pigs for show. That's probably my only pig breeder
Noted.
in the county. Other than that, you're probably just looking at some small types where they're raising one or two in their backyard. Maybe they're trying to raise them for meat purposes, dairy purposes. Like I said, I do get a lot of people that tell me they're raising dairy goats for the milk. But typically, if they're raising more than 10, it's probably commercial wise.
Oh, really? Like more than 10, it's considered commercial
I would
in that
say
spec.
yes, because most people around here, they're gonna have more than 10. But with everybody trying to get ag exemptions who have that
Mm,
10 to 20 acres, they can't run hundreds of goats like you would see
right.
we do. But they're raising them, selling them, trying to get their ag exemption requirements, whether that's they're doing it commercially, or if they do have a business where they're raising them for show. It's again, you're not raising hundreds of them, you're raising 20, 30, 40 head at a time.
So how common is, and I know like you can do like obviously you can do sheep, like you can do hair sheep. I don't know, do they make hair goats? I say hair goats. Are there any such thing as a hair goat or are they all sheep?
All goats have hair.
Right. Okay.
So I guess you could call them hair goats. But yeah, all goats have hair. Sheep, you got two options. You do have your normal sheep that have the wool,
Okay.
or the big one that's really taken off over the past, I'd say, 10 years is your Dorpers. Those are hair sheep. Dorpers are a lot hardier. When I was out in Angelo working for the research center, I worked for them running 1,000 head of sheep on 3 different ranches out there doing all their experiments that the doctors were trying to do with their PhDs. But found out Dorpers, they always looked fat no matter what fit pasture I turned them on. It could have no grass and they still looked fine. They're real hardy. They're basically the Spanish goat of the sheep world.
Are Dorper, are they like an American breed or they, I know like it seems like a lot of like sheep goat breeds are like from Africa. Do you know where they originate from?
Not off the top of my head,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Not no.
Um, see, I told you, Jason, I was gonna come up with some random super random question for
Well,
the
let me
day.
ask one hard question for.
Right, one that's our quota. We've met our quota. No more hard questions for the duration of this talk today.
But I will say Dorpers are the ones that I do recommend if people want to get into sheep because you don't have to deal with the wool. So you don't have to shear them at least once a year, get that wool off of them when it gets real hot. Otherwise, everybody's seen those videos online where it's the sheep that hasn't been touched for 6 years and it's just a
Yeah.
big ball of wool. Dorpers, they're hardier and you don't have to deal with that because they are a hair sheep. So it makes it a whole lot easier for a new landowner or someone new into that part of the world to really get their foot set in there.
Yeah, so if you do livestock for their wool, you do have to shear them at least, is it just once? It's just once a year, correct?
At least once a year.
At least once a
Sometimes
year.
it can be twice, but at least once.
So at that point, you would either have to teach yourself, which probably it'd be a very steep learning curve to teach yourself,
You would
have
be
someone teach you, or pay somebody to come do it for you.
correct. And like I said, when out there when we had the 1,000 head, they paid someone and they'd come in and it'd be about 3 days of constant sharing and picking up wool, but they would get them done real fast.
Did you ever try to do it yourself?
I didn't while I was out there, but I have sheared sheep for 4-H families, things like that, getting it off of them. So not nearly as quick as those guys, but I can get it done.
I know you like watch the videos and they do it so quick, and you're like, how? I mean, it's just like at that point, it's just, I guess, muscle memory. Like they just,
It is. It's just
you just
muscle
do it.
memory. It's just like riding or riding a bike, as they say. It's just you don't forget. It's just natural at that point.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially
So
when you're doing a bunch of them at one time, probably.
Yes.
it's gonna kill your back to shear sheep.
Oh,
Like
guaranteed.
Ought to.
They gotta have a really good chiropractor after 2 days of those.
it's like that in farriers. Like I always just feel for them. I'm like, y'all bend over all day. Like,
I
oh
almost
my
signed
God.
up to take a farrier class in college, and I was like, no, thank you. Actually, now that I
Oh,
think about it, I'm probably short enough, but no, thank you.
No,
And then
no.
I have a question about the wool sheep. So I guess if somebody did want to get into wool sheep, what do they do with the wool? Like I know that there's a market for it, but what does that look like around here? Like where would you go to sell it?
Around here, I don't know if anybody really takes it. You probably
Okay,
go out west, San
that's
Angelo,
more west.
because there's a lot more wool lambs and things like that out west of here. But yeah, around here, not a whole
Not too
lot.
much.
Do you
Okay,
know,
good to know.
like, do you have any speculation as to why? Like, is there a reason? I mean, it gets cool. It's not like it gets super hot. Is it a brush thing?
Brush thing, because like my family before I was born, we used to run about 1,000 head of Angora goats, which same
Oh,
thing. You got to
mhm.
share them at least once a year. But the industry out here, because of the brush, the cedar that's grown up over the years, things like that, it's kind of just fallen out and moved more west where they're a little more capable out there with their land to run that versus what you're seeing here. Also, this part of the world is growing so fast that a lot of our big ranches are starting to sell off. We don't see that huge production like we used to. And so I think that's kind of why we're seeing it more west than centrally located here in the hill country.
Interesting. Okay,
And I guess
so
if you're really into that, an alternative would be rabbits, right?
Yeah, you could do rabbits.
I did not know that you could do rabbits, and then I forget where I was, but I mean, it makes sense. Like it,
It does.
Very
That's the one
soft.
that I don't do because I don't like rabbits. I know how to cook them.
Yeah.
I don't raise rabbits now.
I don't know. Carly, do you know like what breeds of I don't know. Do y'all know what breeds of rabbits? I have no idea. I'm like, that rabbit has long fur, and that's,
I think it's Angora. I think
do
it's
they
the
make
same.
Angora rabbits?
There is an Angora rabbit, but I don't know if I'm being dumb because we just said it Angora goats.
Yeah,
Carly's gonna dive down a rabbit hole.
yeah, that's one I can't help you
It
with.
is Angora.
Oh, okay. Okay. Are they white? Or do they come in different
Um,
colors?
I think they do. It looks like most of them are white, but they can be like a light gray or have some tan in them and things like that. And then the yarn is dyed.
I was gonna say, I guess y'all don't have too many 4-H kiddos that show hair rabbits, I guess is what they would be.
No, we only have a meat show at ours.
Yeah, we got a meat show and a breeding show, but I don't see
Mm.
any of those. Now, I will tell you one funny thing that I have been seeing a lot more lately is in the pig world, I see a lot more people raising woolly pigs.
We've got a couple over here that has what are they, Cooney,
Yeah, I think it's like
and
Angelista or
then there's another one, yeah.
So do they shear the why? I guess that's the first question is it just like they just want them? Because I don't every pig that I've ever seen, like their hair is very coarse. It is not something desired.
so. From what I know about that pig, and not that we raise them, because we used to raise hogs when I was little too, but we got out of the industry when it collapsed and prices fell. But what I know about those pigs is they are supposed to be the wagyu of the
hmm
pig world. They're supposed to
Oh.
be meat's supposed to be that much better. So we're kind of seeing people really starting to raise those, sell them more privately as far as meat sales, kind of like
Mhm.
you do. You see people selling half cows, full cows. Same thing with those pigs. But yeah, I think I know 3 or 4 different ones. And actually my uncle started raising them too, and I had to give him a hard time about it.
I'm not a big pork person, but now I feel like I feel like I need to try this out and see if it's like really what it's all cracked up to be.
I will let you know because he raised he had about 12 babies a while back, and they're probably about 60,
Aw.
70 pounds now, so it's perfect for the barbecue pit. See if I can get one and see if it's actually everything it's cut up to be.
I was gonna say, update us and let us know. I feel like you have to do like a blind taste
Yep.
test, like
Oh yeah.
so
Yeah,
you don't know, so you can really and truly be give an unbiased opinion as to if one tastes better than the other.
that's a good idea.
So I
So
guess so. Speaking of pigs, like you, hill country pigs, pretty common, not so common.
I also most of the ones that you're gonna see around here are gonna be people that typically raise them for show pigs. Like Chuck Riao, who's just in the county below me. He's been around for a super long time. He was around when we raised pigs. I bought show pigs from him all the time. But realistically, there is not really a market
Mhm.
anymore around here for pigs. If you were going to sell pigs, you'd have to haul them pretty far south or up north. But the pigs, unless you're raising a whole lot of them at one time, the money's just not there.
Yeah.
Because right now, I think the market price is around 40 to 45 cents per pound. So
Oh
if you
wow.
so if you took a 200-pound pig, you might get $80 out
Yeah.
of it.
Not
You got
not
way
worth it.
more of that invested in feed per pig, things like that, than what you're gonna get back.
So, okay, if you were to like, if someone decided they wanted pigs for, like you said, for like a homesteading type scenario of slaughtering their own pigs, would you, do most people keep them? I'll say, I hate to say contained, but I mean, is it common for people to just let them like out in pasture and kind of do their thing? Because then I know at that point they could technically associate with some of their wild counterparts.
They could. So it depends on who you meet. I have been to a place where, yeah, the pigs just kind of wandered out in the pasture. They were actually very well trained to where when it was dinner time, they came back to the pen. So how long it took them to train them, I don't really know, but I guarantee you it was a little while. But for the most part, yeah, most people, if you're gonna raise them for butcher, you're raising them at home, you probably have them in a pen. That way they can't root get into everything. They're not gonna get away from you. Because yeah, obviously we deal with a lot of feral hogs. And that's definitely something that it could attract. They could wander off. and then start causing even more problems with our continuous population growing. But yeah, typically, if you're going to raise them at home, you want to keep them in a small area where they're contained, and make sure you feed them, have water, shelter, because especially when it's cold, they
Yeah.
definitely weren't going to want to get into some hay, some kind of area where they're going to stay a lot warmer.
Yeah, I still don't know how feral hogs like survive this type of weather because I mean, you just look at them and it's like you don't, there's not much like, there's no like that really fluffy layer that like all other mammals get. Like I don't know how they survive.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
really don't.
they're tough. That's all I can tell you is they are tough.
I mean, I guess do they make like a piggy like cuddle pile like a and just like I don't I don't know. I'd be curious. I don't know if there's any studies on how feral pigs stay warm when it's cold. I'd be curious now.
I'm sure there is.
I side tangent. So if someone were to say like decide to let pigs out on their property just to roam about, I guess like strand, a 5 strand would not necessarily work because the pigs could just go out underneath. So it'd have to be similar fencing to sheep or goats.
Yes. Or you could buy the 4x4 panels, where that's the metal panels, and you have to put those up. But again, it's going to be quite expensive to do, depending on how big of an area you're doing.
Yeah.
But that would definitely keep them in a little longer than your regular fencing would.
And so, okay, I guess we've kind of covered, I'll say, the common ones that a lot of people talk about. Are we kind of missing any common ones that you kind of want to touch on? Those are kind of the ones I can think of.
Yeah, those are, for the most part, that's the ones that I can think of too. Other than doing, we're going back to the goats. Your other option there is the boar goats, which boar goats are a little meatier, so they're a little heavier. You're going to bring a little more at the market itself, because they are the meatier goat. But there again, Spanish goats are a lot more hardy than boar goats. I know for a while we were trying to mix in boar goat to our Spanish goats, but over the past, I think, 7 years now, we've strictly been going back to Spanish, really breeding in that Spanish gene because they are that much hardier, is what we found on the ranch. But that's your other option there for goats is boar goats. And that's typically what you see. You're either going to see Spanish or you're going to see boar.
So,
Every once in a while, I get the fun question of I want goats that I can scream at and they get scared. I get that
oh,
question.
the fainting goats.
Yeah. That's a question I get a lot is where can I get some of those and are they good to have? And I'm like, well, if you want entertainment, they're absolutely great to have.
It all depends on your goals. If your goal is entertainment, get a thinking goat.
And I think like what I've heard is that like that was where like the scapegoat originated from because they'd throw those in with like their prized sheep. They
Uh-huh.
get a predator that goes after them. That goat faints and it
There was the
it
fall guy.
uh-huh. Yeah, he's dinner for the predator and all the really expensive livestock get away.
Yeah. And a lot of people love them and I want them as pets. And I mean, like Carly said, if that's your goal and you want something as a hobby, by all means, you can definitely get those. But
They're harder to scare than you think though.
they are harder to scare than you think. We
Yeah.
randomly had one show up on the ranch one time, and it was the funniest thing. Eventually, it died, but it was,
So, okay, and I guess how common do you get a lot of calls about like alpacas or llamas?
I
I
was
realize
just
that's
about to say
also
that.
obviously like hair or wool.
yeah, and that's more towards the hobby side.
Yeah,
You're gonna get them because they're going to be fun for you. It's something that you've researched, obviously, something that you've looked at, or maybe you went somewhere and saw some and you thought, hey, that's a cool idea.
yeah.
I wonder what it would take to do that. I don't get a whole lot of phone calls. If I do get some, it's more of along the lines of I have some sheep and goats. The dogs aren't working. I've heard that they might be a good solution as a guard animal, which they are. But that's pretty much as far as it goes, as far as the questions I get on it, is more of a guard animal situation.
And that
Yeah,
was sort of
that's what I usually get
yeah,
too.
I was gonna ask because I think of the two, llamas are supposed to be guard animals, alpacas, not
Alpaca,
quite.
not so much, but
Yeah.
llamas, yes.
Yeah.
You can always use donkeys too. We had
Yes.
one. They thought it was a cow, so it stayed with the cows instead of the goats at some point, and we let it live its life out there. But typically we do dogs, and we'll have about 6 to 8 dogs that we run with our goats.
Okay, so we had oh gosh, Carly,
I think we said this last week too. Episode 15, Livestock Guardian Dogs with
Costanza.
Dr. Costanzo, yes.
Yes. Yeah, so he had mentioned a couple breeds. What breed of dogs do y'all run?
Great Pyrenees. My favorite one though, his name was Duke. He died back when I was in high school, but he was a Dalmatian Great Pyrenees mix.
Oh,
And so he was big, tall, had the Dalmatian spots, but also looked like a Great Pyrenees at the same time.
that's
He
interesting.
was cool. He was my favorite.
So, I mean, I think we've covered just about everything without, getting too far into the weeds. Is there anything else that you want to sort of mention to people, or anything that they also need to keep in mind when choosing livestock for their property?
I had some a second ago, but it went out of my mind, but it might come back here in a minute. But realistically, what I would leave with people is set your goal. Know what your goal is for your property before you decide to do anything. Whether, like I said, whether that is if it's for money, you're trying to make money off your property, so you're trying to get animals on there, or is it self-sufficiency, or is it just a hobby? And then from that point, look at what structures do you already have set up? Is it how many do you have fence lines? Do you have water? Is there a pond? Is there some way that you can get water out there for those animals? Shelter. What kind of shelter do you have? Also, working pens. You will need working pens. If you ever, with everything, you got to have somewhere where you can put the animals, get them corralled so that you can give them shots. You can vaccinate them when they're sick. You can work through the babies, giving them IDs, whether that's a brand for cattle or maybe a ear tag of some sort. But you got to have some kind of working pens. And then the last thing I always tell people is if you are going to get into the animal world, find you a vet. Get to know a vet that does large animals. Get to know them real well. Get them in your phone. Make sure you have a good relationship with that vet because everything's going to run for that vet. If you need to get a shot, you're probably going to need to call the vet these days because the vet has to prescribe, just like your doctor does, a lot of the good medications that you're going to need. The vet has to prescribe them. So you need to have a working relationship with that vet, whether they're a travel vet, meaning they'll come to your property, work on all the animals out there, or if it's a vet that you have to take your animals into. So having that trailer and truck ready to go so you can get the animals over there. But you gotta have a vet. If you're waiting until something gets sick, it's too late to try to find a vet.
Because they always get sick at the worst hours,
They
like
do.
9 o'clock at night, or 8 a.m. on a Sunday when vets' offices aren't open.
Yep. And then after that, once you figure all that out, figuring out your goal and then coming up with a management plan on how you're going to achieve that goal, where you're going to start, how many animals you might start with, just to kind of get the practice down and then working your way through that. And that's typically when I go out, those are the things I talk about and try to leave with that homeowner to say, here's what you need to think about first.
And then it's like speaking with your county extension agent. They
Yeah.
can help walk you towards what would be the appropriate number of livestock for your property, type of livestock.
Yes.
That's why we're doing this whole series is, to give y'all some information, but really and truly at the end of the day, every county is different, every property is different.
Correct.
So unfortunately in extension, we always like to use the phrase, well, it depends. And unfortunately, it really and truly does depend. We're not, if we could give you an across the board answer, we would love to, but we can't do that, unfortunately, for a multitude of reasons. But all right. Well, Carly, any last minute thoughts?
No, I think we covered it and went down enough shallow rabbit holes.
shallow rabbit holes that we covered our quota for the week. But yeah, so this is our last episode for the year. This will be end of season 1. We'll start season 2 in April. So we wish y'all a happy stock show season for our county agents out there, or if you have any kiddos in 4-H. Safe travels over the next couple of months, and we'll see y'all down the road. Thank you, Jason, for coming on and being a guest and speaking with us today about livestock.
Of course,
Thank
thank you
you.
for the invite.
All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye.